Title: My brother-in-law mocked my Navy. Office job. Then a SEAL heard my call sign. Title: They mocked my office job. Then a Navy SEAL heard my call sign. My brother-in-law raised his beer at the 4th of July barbecue and told everyone I had spent my Navy career flying a desk. He said it twice. The second time, people laughed. My sister looked down at the paper plate in her lap. My nephew stopped chewing. And I stood there beside the grill with my hip burning from old surgical screws, letting the smoke blow across my face because I had learned a long time ago that not every insult deserves air. Then Darren leaned closer, grinning in that bright blue Hawaiian shirt, and asked, "Come on, Nora, if you were such a legend, what was your little call sign?" Before I could answer, a man near the fence dropped his cup. He was older now, broader around the shoulders, with a gray beard and the stillness of someone who had once lived too close to gunfire. He stared at me like he had just seen a ghost. Then he whispered, "Ghost Mama." The whole backyard went silent. And that was the first time my family understood that the woman they had been mocking was the only reason some men came home from Kandahar alive. My name is Nora Vale. For 24 years, I wore a Navy uniform. Most people hear pilot and imagine clean skies and movie music. They do not imagine dust, fuel warnings, radio static, or the kind of decisions that leave metal in your body and voices in your sleep. Now, I teach flight simulators in Pensacola, in a second-floor room with no windows. The young pilots know I limp when rain comes in from the Gulf. They know I drink black coffee and do not raise my voice. They do not know that the screws in my left hip came from an ejection seat that saved my life badly. They also do not know about Atlas, my old yellow lab, who died the winter before all this happened. After him, my little house by the bay became too quiet. The kind of quiet that does not feel peaceful. The kind that listens back. For years, I told myself survival was an unpaid debt. So I stayed useful, I taught, I volunteered, I showed up for my sister Beth, her children, and even her husband Darren Pike, a loud contractor who loved veterans in speeches but had trouble respecting them in rooms. The 4th of July barbecue was at Beth's house because Darren said it was good for community visibility. He had invited neighbors, 2 county officials, a banker, 3 subcontractors, and half a dozen people. None of us knew. There were flags in flower pots, cheap bunting along the porch rail, and a folding table covered in burgers sweating under foil. I almost did not go. My hip had been bad that morning. Rain was moving in from the Gulf, and the screws had started their slow electric complaint before sunrise. I stood in my bedroom holding a blue shirt in one hand and a bottle of pain medicine in the other, thinking about staying home with the ceiling fan and the silence. Then Beth texted me, "Please come. Darren invited people from the foundation. I do not want to do this alone." That was the first time I heard about the foundation. When I arrived, Darren was already drunk enough to perform. He had on a Hawaiian shirt, so bright it looked radioactive, and he stood beside the grill with one foot on a cooler, like he was being photographed for a magazine called Men Who Borrow Confidence. "Nora!" he shouted. "There she is, our very own Top Gun." People turned. I smiled politely. "Happy 4th, Darren." He spread his arms. "Come on, give us something patriotic. Flyover sound effect, classified war story, anything?" Beth appeared beside me with a bowl of coleslaw and an apology already in her eyes. "Let her get a plate first," she said. Darren laughed. "Relax. I'm honoring her service. Right. Nora, what did you do again? Simulator stuff? Office job with a joystick?" A few people chuckled because they did not yet understand. What kind of man asks questions he does not want answered? I teach, I said. See? Darren pointed with his beer bottle. That's what I'm saying. Everybody acts like military means explosions and secret missions. Half of it is office work. That was true enough to be boring, also false enough to be cruel. I did not answer. I took a paper plate. I put one burger on it. No bun? My appetite had left sometime between Top Gun and joystick. Across the yard, a man near the fence watched me with his head slightly tilted. I did not recognize him at first. War changes faces. Time changes them more. But something about his stillness caught my attention. Darren followed my gaze. Oh, that's Caleb Rourke, he said too loudly. Former SEAL, real operator, Team 5. Right, Caleb? Caleb did not move much. Once. Darren loved that. See, Nora, that's the kind of guy with stories. Not some training room nonsense. Beth whispered, Darren, stop. But he had an audience now, and men like Darren often mistake an audience for permission. He lifted his beer. Come on, Nora. Tell us your war name. Don't pilots have those? Maverick, Ice Queen. What was yours? Spreadsheet? That one got a bigger laugh. My nephew Miles, 15 and skinny in the way boys are before they suddenly become men, looked at the grass. I set my plate down. Darren, I said, leave it. He leaned closer, smiling with beer on his breath. Just one question. What was your little call sign? Caleb Rourke dropped his cup. It hit the grass without much sound, but somehow everyone heard it. His face had changed. Not into surprise exactly. Recognition. The kind that arrives with ghosts behind it. He looked at me. Ghost Mama? My hand tightened on the edge of the picnic table. Darren laughed once, uncertain. Ghost what? Caleb stepped away from the fence. You were Ghost Mama, he said. Kandahar, December, Grid Blackstone. The backyard lost every sound except the grill popping grease. I said nothing. Caleb's voice lowered. You stayed 23 minutes past bingo fuel? The name took me back to Kandahar. Not as a picture, as heat. Heat rising from metal, heat trapped in body armor, heat wrapped around dust, fuel, and warning lights. A SEAL and Marine element had been pinned down in terrain so hostile the helicopters could not reach them. My aircraft had already taken ground fire. One engine was damaged. Fuel pressure was dropping. Command ordered me to withdraw twice. Below me, men were wounded in the open. A young voice came through the radio. Any aircraft overhead. We cannot move them. We need cover. My backseater said, Nora, we are leaking fuel. Command repeated, Ghost Mama, disengage. I pressed transmit. Negative, Ghost Mama remaining on station. For 23 minutes, we stayed. We rolled in, low, ugly, and dangerous. Every pass forced the enemy to look up instead of down. Every second gave the evacuation team a chance to move one more man. When the last Marine was dragged onto the bird, I finally turned away. We landed hard. Fire trucks chased us down the runway. Later came surgery, screws in my hip, and the official language of people trying to decide whether disobedience that saves lives is still disobedience. No one at the barbecue knew that. Caleb did, because he had been one of the men on the ground. Caleb crossed the yard and stopped in front of me. Then he stood at attention. Not for show, not to embarrass me, just enough for everyone who understood uniforms to understand respect. Ma'am, he said. I swallowed. Rourke. You remember me? You had a broken wrist and refused morphine because you said it made you sing. A faint smile touched his face. I did sing badly. No one laughed now. Darren looked around the yard as if someone had changed the language without warning. Then he recovered by becoming louder. "Well," he said, forcing a grin, "looks like we've got a celebrity. Nora, that is exactly the kind of story my new foundation needs." "What foundation?" I asked. "Veteran Mentorship Foundation," he said. "Helping former service members transition into business leadership. Big mission." The moment admiration became inventory, I recognized it. "I'm not interested," I said. Darren's smile thinned. "You won't help veterans?" I stepped closer. "Do not use veterans as a leash with me." His face went flat. That was where the barbecue ended for me, even though the music kept playing. 2 days later, a photo of me from the barbecue appeared on the Veteran Mentorship Foundation website. I was not smiling in the photo. I was standing near the grill, one hand braced on the picnic table, Caleb in the background. Under it, the caption read, "Combat aviation hero Nora Vale supports our mission to rebuild veterans through entrepreneurship." I stared at the screen so long my coffee went cold. Below the photo was a donation button. Then a sponsorship package. Then a list of advisory supporters. My name was third. Captain Nora Vale, U.S. Navy, retired, call sign, Ghost Mama. They had even used the call sign. I called Darren. He answered on speaker. I could hear machinery behind him. Or maybe he wanted me to hear it. "Hey, superstar. Take my name off your website." He laughed. "Good morning to you too." "Darren." "Relax. It is publicity. You said you didn't want to help, but come on. It's for a good cause." "What cause?" "Veteran mentorship." "Show me the program." A pause. "We're in development." "Show me the board." "Nora, don't start with military paperwork." "Show me the financials." His voice changed. "You know what your problem is? You think because some SEAL got misty-eyed over an old nickname, you get to command everyone." "I am not commanding you. I am warning you." "That sounds like commanding." "Remove my name by 5 o'clock." He went quiet. Then he said, "Or what?" I did not answer immediately. That was another thing war taught me. Never make threats for emotional satisfaction. Make statements you are prepared to complete. "Or I will remove it for you," I said. Then I hung up. By 5 o'clock, the website had changed. My photo was gone. My name remained in a PDF sponsorship brochure. That was when I knew Darren was not careless. He was desperate. Caleb came to my house the next evening with 2 coffees and no small talk. He had found my address through Beth, who had finally stopped pretending nothing was wrong. "I did some looking," he said. "You always knock on women's doors with suspicious research?" "Only pilots who saved my life." I let him in. My house still smelled faintly like old dog, or maybe that was memory. Atlas's leash hung by the back door because I had not yet learned how to take it down. Caleb noticed it, but did not mention it. I appreciated that. We sat at the kitchen table while rain tapped the windows. Caleb opened a folder. "Darren's construction company is sinking." I looked at the first page. How badly? Bad enough that 2 suppliers filed liens last month. Bad enough that his equipment loans are delinquent. Bad enough that a younger contractor named Trent Voss is underbidding him with drone surveys, modular crews, new trucks, and actual accounting. That is not my problem. "No, but this is..." He slid another page toward me. It was a loan application tied to the foundation. Purpose: Veteran Workforce Reintegration Facility. Community partner: Pike Coastal Builds. Public relations assets: Retired Navy combat aviator endorsement pending. My stomach tightened. He is using the nonprofit to prop up the business. "Looks like it," Any grant money? 2 applications pending, 1 private pledge already deposited. $40,000. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Darren did not just want to borrow my credibility. He wanted to wear it. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. Caleb leaned back. "Because respect is not something people get to steal from the people who earned it." That sentence sat between us. Then he said, "Quieter." And because for years, I told my kids a pilot stayed over us when staying made no sense. I did not know your name. I only knew the call sign. Ghost Mama. I am not letting some drunk contractor turn that into a fundraiser. I looked at the rain. Survival had always felt like a debt. For the first time in a long time, someone made it feel like a fact. Not a burden. A fact. I took out a legal pad. "Then we do this clean." Caleb nodded. "Public records only, screenshots, corporate filings, loan documents if accessible, no hacking, no guessing, no family gossip. If we are going to put him down, the floor needs to be made of proof." He smiled faintly. "Yes, ma'am." Darren unraveled over the next 3 weeks. Men like him rarely collapse in one dramatic motion. They shed control in pieces. A cruel comment here, a slammed door there, a joke that stops being a joke halfway through. Beth called me after he punched a hole through the laundry room door because Miles backed his truck into a mailbox. "He scared the kids," she whispered. "Are you safe?" "Yes, he left." "Where are the kids?" "In their rooms." "Pack overnight bags." "Nora." "Beth, pack the bags." She did. She and the kids stayed with me 2 nights. Darren texted apologies by morning, then insults by noon. By dinner, he was posting about men under attack for trying to build something real. That night, he tagged the foundation page. A screenshot went into the folder. 2 days later, he came to my garage. I was changing the air filter in my old SUV when his truck roared into the driveway. He got out wearing work boots too clean for work and anger too rehearsed to be pure. "You recording me?" he demanded. I straightened slowly. My hip did not like the motion. "No." "Because you and that seal have been sniffing around my business." "Your business is leaving tracks." He stepped closer. "You always talk like that? Like you're briefing a room?" "When necessary." His face twisted. "Look at you," he said, Costco Gia Jane with a limp, acting like some battlefield saint because one guy remembers you from 20 years ago. I said nothing. He looked past me into the garage, where Atlas's old dog bed still sat folded in the corner. Then he smiled in a way I will never forget. "You know what you are, Nora, a tired woman with a bad leg, living alone with a dead dog's bed. Pretending silence is dignity. There are insults that strike the ear. That one struck the room. For 1 second, I saw Atlas lifting his gray muzzle from that bed. I saw the winter morning when he did not come when I called. I saw myself sitting on the floor with his head in my lap, apologizing to a dog for outliving another thing that loved me. Darren wanted me to shout. He needed me to become unstable. I picked up a rag and wiped my hands. "You are trespassing," I said. He barked a laugh. "That's it?" "Yes." "Your big war voice?" I met his eyes. "My war voice is not for you." Something in that frightened him more than yelling would have. He pointed at me. "Stay away from my foundation." "No. You think you can ruin me?" "No," I said. "I think you already did. I am just organizing it." He left tire marks in my driveway. I photographed them. Not because they mattered. Because by then, Documentation had become a kind of breathing. A week later, Darren printed invitations for the Veteran Mentorship Foundation launch dinner at a Holiday Inn ballroom. He listed me as guest of honor without asking. Beth brought the invitation to my kitchen with shaking hands. By then, she had filed for separation, not because of one website or one broken door, but because her son had started flinching whenever Darren moved too fast. Caleb and I spent 4 days turning screenshots, loan records, donor messages, and public filings into a presentation clean enough that no one could call it gossip. The Holiday Inn golf ballroom smelled like carpet cleaner, chicken gravy, and rented patriotism. There were red, white, and blue centerpieces on every table. A banner behind the podium read, "Veteran Mentorship Foundation from Battlefield to Boardroom." Darren had put my call sign on the program. Ghost Mama, a legacy of service. I almost turned around. Not because I was afraid. Because grief and anger can look very similar inside the body, and I did not trust mine yet. Then Caleb appeared at my side in a dark suit. He did not offer his arm. He knew better than to assume I needed help. He only said, "Room's ugly." I laughed once. It steadied me. Beth sat near the back with Miles and his younger sister, Annie. They looked nervous, but they had come. That mattered. Darren was at the front, shaking hands with donors and local businessmen. When he saw me in uniform, his face flashed with triumph. He thought I had surrendered to the script. He hurried over. "Nora," he said warmly, for witnesses, "you look incredible. This means a lot." "I imagine it does." He leaned closer, smile fixed. "Stay on message tonight." I looked at him. "What message?" "Unity, veterans, healing, family." I glanced at the banner. Interesting word, family. His jaw flexed. Then the banquet began. Darren spoke for 28 minutes. He talked about brotherhood, sacrifice, warrior ethics, and what he called the corporate reintegration pipeline. He used phrases that sounded important only if no one asked what they meant. He said America owed its heroes more than applause. He said his foundation would turn battlefield discipline into business leadership. He never mentioned that no veterans had been enrolled. He never mentioned that the office address was a rented mailbox. He never mentioned that half the pledged money had already been marked for facility improvements at a building owned by Pike Coastal Builds. Then he smiled toward me. "And tonight, we are honored to welcome a true American hero, a woman whose call sign has inspired warriors across generations. Please welcome Captain Nora Vale, known to many as Ghost Mama." People stood. They clapped. The sound washed over me like rotor noise. I walked to the podium. My hip hurt halfway there. I did not show it. The microphone was too tall. I lowered it. Darren stood at my right, smiling. I placed my folder on the podium. "Good evening," I said. The room settled. "My name is Nora Vale. I am a retired United States Navy aviator. I am also the person whose name, image, and call sign have been used by this foundation without authorization." The silence arrived instantly. Darren's smile died but stayed on his face like something glued there. I clicked the remote. Slide 1 appeared behind me. A screenshot of the foundation website with my BBQ photo. A few people turned to look at Darren. He whispered, "Nora." I did not look at him. I was never asked to serve as an advisor. I never endorsed this organization. I never approved use of my service record, my photograph, or my call sign for fundraising. Slide 2. The sponsorship brochure. My name appears in donor materials distributed after I expressly requested removal. A banker in the front row leaned forward. Slide 3. The loan application. These documents represent my service history as a pending credibility asset tied to a proposed veteran reintegration facility. Darren stepped toward the microphone. This is a misunderstanding. I turned slightly. Please do not interrupt me. He froze. Not because I was loud. Because I was not. Slide 4. Pike Coastal builds debt summaries, supplier liens, equipment delinquencies, foundation reimbursements. The evidence suggests that funds raised under veteran mentorship language were positioned to support a failing private construction business. The room began to move, not physically, but socially. People exchanged glances. Phones came out. A donor whispered to his wife. One of Darren's subcontractors stared at the table like he had just realized his unpaid invoice had company. Darren snapped. This is family business. Caleb stood from his table. His voice carried without effort. No, you made it veteran business when you used her call sign. Every head turned. Darren pointed at him. Stay out of this. Caleb walked one step forward. You asked her about that call sign in a backyard, he said. Biggest mistake you ever made. The room went still again. Caleb looked at the crowd. I was on the ground in Kandahar when Ghost Mama stayed overhead with a damaged aircraft so my team could get our wounded out. She did not use that name to raise money. She earned it when fuel was leaking and command told her to leave. Darren's face went pale. I clicked the final slide. A screenshot of his message. The Ghost Mama thing opens doors. People eat that hero stuff up. Nobody spoke. Not even Darren. I leaned toward the microphone. Respect cannot be borrowed from the people who earned it. It cannot be printed on a program, placed in a brochure, or used as collateral for a lie. I closed the folder. I am requesting that every donor here suspend contributions until an independent audit is completed. I am requesting that my name be removed immediately from all materials. And I am requesting that any veteran in this room remember this. Your service is not someone else's marketing asset. Then I stepped back. For a second, there was only the hum of the hotel lights. Then Miles stood. My nephew. 15 years old, skinny, scared, and braver than most adults in that room. He started clapping. Beth stood next. Then Caleb. Then half the room. Darren remained beside the podium, surrounded by applause that was not for him. The consequences came quickly. Donors withdrew before dessert was cleared. The banker requested all loan documents by Monday. 2 subcontractors demanded payment in writing by the end of the week. Pike Coastal Builds had lost 3 pending contracts. By the end of the month, Darren was living above a bait shop near the marina, blaming everyone except the man who had signed his own lies. Beth found a small rental house with yellow cabinets and a porch that leaned slightly to the left. Miles and Annie slept through the night there for the first time in months. No shouting, no holes in the laundry room door, no man turning every mistake into weather. 2 months later, the Navy held a small recognition ceremony at the simulator building. No band, no flyover, just a classroom, a folded flag, grocery store cookies, and a few men from Kandahar sending video messages. One of them simply said, "You got me home. I never forgot." For years, I had believed survival was an unpaid debt. That day, I understood it differently. Survival was not a bill. It was evidence that something terrible had happened, that someone had endured, and that the story was still being written. I took Atlas's leash down the following spring, not because I forgot him, but because love is not proved by leaving everything frozen where grief dropped it. People think the banquet was the night I got my dignity back. They are wrong. Dignity was never Darren's to take. What I got back was the right to stop shrinking for peace. There is the silence of surrender, where you make yourself smaller so cruel people can feel comfortable. And there is the silence of discipline, where you wait until the truth has enough weight to stand without you pushing it. At the barbecue, I had lived in the first kind. At the banquet, I chose the second. If you ask me now about Kandahar, I will tell you the truth. I was not fearless. I was a pilot with a damaged aircraft, a bad fuel leak, and a choice that still wakes me up some nights. But I stayed, and if you ask me about survival, I will tell you what took me years to learn. Survival is not an apology. It is not a debt. It is a chance to tell the truth while you are still here. Sometimes justice is not revenge. It is your sister sleeping safely, your nephew standing taller, your own house becoming quiet in a way that no longer hurts. It is a woman with a limp, a scarred hip, and a name people tried to steal, finally standing in front of a room and saying, "No, this story is mine. You do not get to steal it."